Hello and welcome to this week's podcast episode. We were working very hard this week, but now we are hardly working. My name is Sophia Niemand.
Morning, my name is Peter.
Yes, and we're here at COPA Cape Town, bringing you another episode after this very rough week. I hope everyone's happy with the report cards they received. And if you're not happy with the report card you received, well, at least you have a nice long weekend to digest it.
Yeah, you better start working on it.
Yeah. And happy Women's Day on Tuesday to everyone that's a woman. And we hope that when everyone's back on Wednesday, we'll have a new energy and get into this term. Last week we spoke about good gigs. Quality gigs, yeah. Setting value for yourself. If you didn't check out that episode, go give it a listen. There's some important, difficult conversations around that, but it's you know.
Yeah, but it's good to stay realistic.
Yeah, stay realistic. Because if you're realistic, then you can be optimistic as well. So, yeah, this week we're talking about quality gear. Whether good gear makes a good musician, what risks and benefits there are to investing in better gear, and just generally to hear what you guys want to know about gear.
Yeah, I just get nightmare flashbacks from internet forums when I think about things like that. The guitar community is so hectic on gear and only play this and only do that. It's like
Les Paul, man.
There's like so much more to life than just like drinking one type of cool drink the whole time.
Yeah.
There's probeer 'n sappie af en toe. Ek weet nie.
You don't always have to drink coffee. You can drink tea as well,
it's go to a music shop and play something else other than a Fender Strat. You can do a lot with other instruments as well. Also, actually, talking about Fender Strats, there's usually one thing that sort of kind of bothers me sometimes is they'll create a guitar model, and they'll like try and make it the professional player's instrument.
The guitarist has been released.
Yes.
Keep going.
And but it'll be like a 20k guitar.
Sure.
And then I'm like, I have only bought second-hand gear throughout my career, and it's been working perfectly fine. And I've played on Squier Strats as well, and they work perfectly fine. I've played gigs with a Squier Strat, and the other guitarist had a normal Strat, and there was basically no difference. So, I mean, like, look, this is a big jar of worms. So, there's 2 points I want to make. One, there's a really cool video. I forgot the gentleman's name, but the point he made with the video is he built a guitar out of thin air, basically. He basically, like, put two tables across each other. That's the same neck length for the strings, so the strings will be perfectly in tune. He put a nice pickup under the strings, so it's just like the strings are just hanging in thin air. He tuned it up and he played
Air
it,
guitar.
and literally, and he played it and it sounded great. He had two Honda engines on the tables.
What?
So Honda engines have like really nice tone.
I feel like there's some missing context here.
Yeah.
You should go check out this video.
Go check it out. But he makes the point that like the wood doesn't matter, the brand doesn't matter.
Yes.
None of that really matters. What matters is the pickup, the amplifier, and if you can play it properly in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point in owning the best instrument and then you show up to your bar gig where they're running it through one PA speaker.
Crappy speakers, and an old crappy amp. I mean, it's certainly not worth it. But also, just to come back to the Squiers, I saw an interesting video where they took one of the custom shop builders of Fender. So the custom shop guys is where you can order a custom made Fender and you pay through your nose for this. But it's the top builders of the company that build these guitars. Everything's built from scratch, with hand. In the video, they take the guy out to just go play, guitars in a music shop, and there were a bunch of Chinese squires, and he played them, and he was like, there's not really anything wrong with this guitar. It's perfectly playable.
Yes.
It sounds fine. Maybe if you replace the pickups later on, it'll sound a bit better, but off the wall, there's nothing really wrong with the guitar. And the point he made is that the means of building the guitar got cheaper. So with all the tools you're using to make the guitar, to cut out the wood, the machines, the soldering, all the tools to make the guitar, everything just got cheaper to make. And so the quality of low-end instruments and gear got better, which I think is great, because not everyone can afford. Most musicians can't afford ridiculous prices, even though some people see it as like, oh, you pay for the instrument, you
get the workmanship behind it.
Yeah, but I mean, what's the phrase? You get what you pay for, but it's still, I mean, if you put a lot of effort into how good you play, I mean, you can make anything sound good.
Yes, if you're sitting with the best, Les Paul on the planet, and you can only play pentatonics, it's not really,
and 2 chords, and
it's not really gonna mean that much. So I think the gear is only as good as the musician holding it.
Definitely.
But it does have its benefits. Obviously, there is, quality and maintenance and everything is probably
it's
better
really,
on.
It's little things. So I mean, like on a guitar, your bridge, if you have a really nice bridge, something like graphite or whatever, your sustain will be a little bit better,
yes,
and your strings won't snap as easily.
Yes, so
it's, but I mean, like with music in general, it's a lot of small things that makes a big difference. Even if you start building a studio, if you sort out your power so there's no clicking, or with the electric fence, everything's nicely grounded, you have decent cables, you have nice, not even soundproofing but sound treatment, it all adds up, like 10% this, 15% that, 20% that, 30% that. Same with your musical gear. If you have just like a decent cable, a decent guitar, and a decent amp, you will already sound better than someone that has a good guitar but a crappy amp and like crappy cables. So I would rather have someone spend and really look at secondhand gear. There's nothing wrong with secondhand gear. There's a huge market in South Africa,
yes,
because instruments are so expensive. People invest a lot into secondhand gear. There's such a nice community of
it's
people.
a very much, I wanted to talk about that, the fact we have our South African music instruments group on Facebook.
SA Music Store, yeah.
The biggest musician community in the country, just because with couriers, I remember in lockdown it was dead. It was really not fun. But with couriers coming back, people would be sending everything across the country. You can be like, oh, I want this keyboard, and this keyboard's 25k at my shop. I'm just gonna post on this group that I'm looking for something similar, and you'll find something similar from someone who wants to invest in something new, and they'll let it go for like 10, because they just want to get their next keyboard. I think there is definitely a community, like a culture of your next fix.
Yeah.
Especially, it's like, oh yeah, I've been playing this instrument for a few years, but I'm now seeing this one on the group. Someone's selling this. I want this one just to try it out, and then you put your instrument into circulation. And I've had friends where they bring in these big instruments from overseas, like Ormsby and Dingwall, and then they would trade them off, and then a few months later they'll be like, okay, I want it back, and then they just circulate, and that instrument comes back.
Trading.
It's rather fascinating, and definitely worth getting into. I think I would recommend everyone get onto that group and become part of it all, because it's also studio gear as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I have a very good friend that did that as his job. He literally bought and sold musical instruments.
Yeah.
You know, and he made a quite good living out of it. So I would rather say then, before investing like 20k into one guitar, taking that 20k, getting a really decent guitar for 5 to 7k, even 8k, and then getting yourself some nice cables, getting yourself a nice power supply for
the
your pedals.
long-term little things. Yes. Yeah.
Because those things, it especially a nice power supply, because we all know that great feeling, or that terrible feeling of when you plug in your guitar at a live gig and you just hear bzzz.
Or you have to wiggle the power supply to get anything.
I mean, it still happens with me, and then I'm like, oh damn, I have to get a new cable, and a new patch cable. You know, it's sometimes it's just unlucky as well. But, small stuff makes a big difference.
Questions to COPA about music, business, and stuff. So we had a few odd questions. The first question was, what are the oddest and rarest instruments that you can think of?
Well, is this Western music?
I think for to remain simple, to remain consistent, let's stick to Western, just because I think that Eastern instrumentation, all that deserves its own podcast.
Yeah.
I'd say immediately, like, any baritone or contrabass or even octabass instruments, all of those instruments kind of fall into the realm of obscurity.
Yeah, I mean that and woodwind as well.
Yeah, like but I mean the woodwind, all
woodwind,
of those yes. But I mean, even like a baritone guitar, you don't see that guy that often, and it has a lovely sound. It's very convenient little guitar.
I've seen one once in a shop, and that's about that.
I saw it was a baritone jazz master, and it was like the guitar that, because I love bass. And I love guitar, but I'm neither of those things. And I would like to pick it up. And I remember holding that like baritone and just being like, I would learn to play this. It's somewhere in between the two. You get the high end of the guitar and the low end of the bass, and it's smaller. So it was like I could hold it up above my head with one hand. It was so tiny.
Yeah.
I mean, you also get like your contrabass ukuleles.
Yeah, those are great.
Stuff. I mean, these aren't not necessarily super rare instruments, but they're definitely oddities and kind of obscure. And when we look at the woodwind instruments, sure, that's fascinating. Contrabass flute is my personal favorite.
I haven't seen that.
Because they're like, they just...
Is it like a big flute?
Yeah, it's like a big flute that you yeah, it's just a huge flute, and it sounds like a big flute. It sounds like wind going through a drain pipe. It's insane, and it's super percussive. Does it maybe
have like a tendency to sound like an organ, maybe?
A bit, yes, but the thing is, because it's human breath, so an organ uses, produced air that really breaches that pipe and makes it sing. Because it's human breath, it's playing this incredibly large instrument. It has a very hollow and dark sound. It's almost, it's like drifting, cool. And those kind of like tonguing techniques that they do on flute, especially pan flute, to give it those trills and stuff. It depends mostly on those techniques, because those things, it sounds like toms almost.
That's cool.
It's so deep and beautiful. Woodwind instruments, when you get to contrabass and octabass, baritone, octabass saxophones
that's where the obscurity is at.
They're like just pipes forever. It's like a desk, but it's a saxophone, and you need 11 lungs to play it, but it's disgusting how well those instruments sound.
Imagine the breathing techniques you have to play one of those things.
Yeah, I mean, just a normal saxophone already takes so much. But what I think is really cool about these instruments is, yes, we have all these plugins and stuff that can create cool sounds for us. But when you go and actually look at a lot of these instruments, inspire those kind of sounds. And I mean, these baritone sounds from a woodwind perspective is what inspired most of the sounds for dubstep. You know, you have those low blowing wavetable synths are sometimes sampled from these instruments because of that organic aspect of it. It's so organic. And the moment you take something that's that organic and that fat, because these instruments, they pack a punch, and you put it in through a synthesizer, a wavetable synth, it's so much fun to then get into those sounds and get into that production. So I'd say this kind of knowledge is useful for scoring, and but in general practice, you can get some really nice bass sounds.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more sounds out there than one thinks, because I mean you're sort of kind of held back by your knowledge of instruments sometimes, and just to explore what there is, I think will open like a world of sounds to you, especially if you want to go into, let's say, scoring, or maybe maybe ambient stuff, or maybe you just want to experiment with your own, like, let's say you make progressive rock, or you make, I don't know, weird jazz, and you want to have a bass flute solo.
Yeah, just get some cool stuff in there. It's always a good idea. But yeah, so that is the first question. Our second question was, as a singer, how do I choose a microphone for my voice?
So look, a human voice is probably like the most difficult thing. I mean, the best thing you can do is basically what every other instrumentalist does, is you can just go to a shop and try a few. Because I mean, look, you as a guitarist, you can go to a shop, you can go play on a few guitars. As a vocalist, I don't know anymore with the COVID things. Because I know I had a friend a while ago in a band. She went to a shop literally, and she just went to sing on a few microphones, and she found one that suits her voice, and she was happy with the type of tone she was getting. And like, look, one thing to remember, like, each microphone has a frequency response curve. So let's say you have a higher thin voice, you'll maybe look at a microphone that supports the low end a bit more. Let's say like a male vocal voice, that's a little bit lower. You'll maybe want something that has a bit less low end and like a bit more brightness to it. Also, are you going to sing on the microphone, or are you going to talk on the microphone? Is it for gig use? Is it for, I mean, podcast use or anything? But I mean, performance singers, go to a shop, even go on YouTube or go Google, just like, what's the phrase? Industry standard microphones.
Yeah, that's the key standard.
What is industry standard these days? Because I mean, you have your SM58, cool, you know, everyone still uses it. But I mean, you could always go experiment. I know AKG is good. If you're looking for something a bit cheaper that does the job, Sennheiser does the job as well. I know Prodype. I used to have a few Prodypes. It's like a 57 knockoff almost. They were like 500 rand a mic. They sounded great. They did the job.
Yes.
I remember, sorry, this just brings back a little story. When I worked in a music shop, we had a few of those Prodype microphones. Some of them had switches and some of them didn't. And we had a lady come in, she sang for the church, and she bought one of the microphones, and she came back the next day really, really upset, like unreasonably upset. I was like, oh no, there's something wrong with this microphone. And she was like really angry that the microphone didn't have an on and off switch.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, I mean, you can mute it at the desk. I mean,
it does help to have that little control.
Yeah,
I prefer my mics to not have that, because I'm the one that will always forget the mics off.
Yeah, it's that was really funny though.
So silly.
But go experiment. Hopefully the nearest music shop will be nice enough to help you to set up a microphone. You can sing through it and listen to the type of tone your voice has. I mean, look, the most ideal if you want to go all the way now. because I know they did this with Smashing Pumpkins. They had literally like a table full of microphones, and they set one up. The guy sang a verse, and then they set up the next mic. They sang a verse, set up the next mic, and that was like from the most expensive condensers to like the cheapest microphones. And then they just decided that the SM58 yet again was just fine for his vocals, and they recorded a whole album just on SM58.
That's
it was
bizarre.
like, you know, it's his voice just worked for that. So
I think a big thing to consider as well is whether you want something like an XLR mic or a USB mic or a hybrid. I think for home production.
Oh yeah, for home
That's
production.
a big thing to think about. I mean, you have your performance mics, but there are all these microphones that go directly into USB port.
Yeah, look, I have a bit of a problem with that. Look, if you're going to be using an audio interface, a USB mic and audio interface don't work together.
Oh yes, yeah, but you get your hybrid sometimes.
Yeah, you
like
do.
The Yeti.
They do tend to sound a bit tinny sometimes, but I would rather then go for like a cheap interface setup than. I mean, Samsung also did the USB mic, and that came out pretty okay.
Yeah, I think it depends on what your budget is. I remember when I did my shopping in my first year of studying, it was also that, what do I get? At that time, the Yeti Blue was the best thing ever. Yeah. Everyone had a Yeti Blue. And I have my personal reasons for not getting the Yeti Blue in the end. It was a bit silly, but like my ultimate deciding factor was I'm a keyboardist. I also want to plug in my keyboard. Get that extra bit of money, get that interface with the extra channel, and just you're just better kitted for it. But if I was, say, just a streamer or just a singer or just a track producer who wants to put in a few backing vocals here and there, I would probably have gotten just a USB mic, you know, because I think for now I kind of wish I had one just for like personal daily use, because I constantly have my condenser set up for like casual stuff, and that's also not great. So
look, one thing, like an audio interface does increase the audio quality overall.
Yes,
that's just one thing you need to keep in mind. It's like, yes, you have to set up a condenser and you can create missions, but you know, go through 5 minutes of trouble to sound good. I mean, it's well, that's just a rule of thumb for me.
Then we have our final question here, which is a hard case versus gig bags. Which is a better investment? So
that depends on the instrument. But I know for me, well, recently I saw now when I went to Strab, I had to take a guitar and a bass with me, and we flew from Cape Town to Joburg. And so usually you're always on your nerves when you're traveling with the airline and you have instruments with you. My bass was in a soft bag, and my guitar case, well, my guitar was in a case. And I mean, look, off the bat, just moving around with my bass bag on my back, you know, because it's got straps and everything, it makes it a bit easier. Yes, you worry about, you know, where it's going to go and how they're going to handle it. I mean, the guitar case is a bit of a mission. It packs a bit easier though if you're on a car. But flying specifically with that, I noticed now with Left Airlines specifically, they took my hard case guitar, they put it in the cargo hold in with a fragile sticker. Then they took my bass bag and they stowed it in the plane itself behind the last row of seats.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so they take care of your instrument a bit more because it's in a bag.
Recently there's been a lot more, when you're buying plane tickets, different airlines are different, but you can choose that it's an instrument bag. And they actually, some airlines do treat it differently. The other day I was behind a guy at check-in, and I think he was checking in a kit.
Oh, hectic.
Because he had this big Shure case. It was like a little tank on a trolley. And I was like, oh, that says Shure and it's round. So it looks like it was maybe all of his cymbals in like a big plastic thing. And I was like, I can't imagine traveling with that. Obviously, you can throw that thing around. And I mean, also deep down in my heart, I'm like, come on, how hard do you have to throw a cymbal for it to break? But I mean,
Yeah.
obviously they didn't and everything. I don't want to make people angry now.
When that thing warps a little bit, the
yes,
sound.
no.
The sound
So, but
goes.
it was still cool to be like, oh wow, there's always options. I'm as a keyboard player, I had a soft case for my 88, and it's weird because it was not that bad. I just always made sure I had someone with me who can carry it for me. I always had a slave.
I think that makes it a bit difficult with the keys.
And then I got a hard case with wheels, and it was the coolest investment ever because that thing is, first of all, it's big enough that I can actually put my 64 in the case with the 88. Like I can squeeze both keyboards into that bag, and when I carry it, I feel so safe because it feels like I'm like carting along like a big shield. Like I feel like like I'm like some warrior. So I feel safer at night, which is a big plus. But the thing is too big for my car. Where I usually with a soft bag I could, slide the keyboard into my car with the seat down and take 2 passengers with. Now someone can sit in front, but with seats entirely forward, and no one can sit in the back because like the stand and everything. And that's with, I think, with keyboards, when considering a bag, always consider your stand as well. So
Yeah.
how are you gonna carry both? How many times are you gonna walk?
How do contrabass players do it?
Oh my goodness! I have the funniest story. So speaking of basses, like soft bags, I have this friend who plays upright. I have a few upright friends, and he drives like a bantam bakkie, and he also once had someone else drive his car and load up his bass, and the bass just like clook on the neck, like just completely broke off in the bakkie. So you can have a big car and stuff's already gonna go wrong. But in a complete contrast, this bassist he tours around the country, Werner Spies. He plays for Charles Duplessis and whatnot. He's this tall guy and he drives a Honda Jazz. And I remember we're standing at this gig and we're waiting for him to arrive, and he arrives and we just think to ourselves, I wonder who's bringing his upright, because that's a Honda Jazz. And he gets out and it was like a Mary Poppins handbag situation where he opened the boot and he just pulled out this full acoustic bass, and we're just like, how did this
Magic.
thing fit into the car? And he's like, no, he just drives with the neck over his gearbox. And I was like, dude, you're going to get in a lot of trouble for that. But musicians make a plan. Just be resilient.
Yeah, the gig is the most important thing to do, to get to. It doesn't matter. Do you have to drive with one wheel? Yes, it's fine. I'll do it.
So that wraps up our gear talk for today. We're quickly going to talk about our live performance track. So let's take it from the top. It's live performance workshop.
Yay!
Take it from the top. It's live performance workshop.
So what do we have this week?
It's Billie Eilish's Happier Than Ever, which is really cool tune, I think, for the fact that
It's the old school sounding one, eh?
yeah, we can immediately just take our hats off to her brother Phineas. I think as far as our departments and what we do here at COPA, Phineas is a model of what we can strive to be. I mean, so they're like a sibling group. They started as house production, house as in home, not house as in the genre. Although I'm pretty sure he dipped his toes in there. And it's really cool to listen to all of the stuff they do till now. They're still producing it. I mean, obviously they got better gear because they have more money, and they probably have a home studio now. It's no longer a bedroom, but the technique and the intention and the creative drive's the same. It's that this is my project, this is my baby, this is my song. I am in charge of the lyrics. I'm in charge of everything, everything from production, all the production techniques applied, the instrumentation, everything. And I think that's what makes Billie Eilish so incredibly unique, is that her sound was her sound, on her brother's sound, of course, because he was producing it. But it's such a beautiful team effort, and I think it can be quite an inspiration to any musician sitting at home producing their own stuff. Like you can actually make
definitely.
it work.
Yeah. It's with the tools available these days. It's not that difficult anymore to create something that is really viable for the market. I mean, it's become easier and more difficult at the same time, because it's easy to, yes, invest into a small studio setup and start writing music, but now you are competing with millions of other people that's doing the same thing.
Yes, okay, there is the truth in that.
You know, so it's you just have to be better, I guess, because
Yeah.
I mean anyone can upload a song to Spotify. You know, it's how good the song is and how good you market that song.
Yeah, and what you're kind of doing to chameleon into the music scene, it's a big thing, because it's like you have to both follow trends and create trends. And I think that's what Billie Eilish did particularly well with her last few albums. I mean, none of her stuff stays the same. It's always like one little thing slightly different, and she does it so shamelessly, but at the same time she is following trends. Like there are certain, like when Drunk Trap Beats was in, her whole album had that in. And then you know, now it's more the kind of the pop punk that's coming back because of Rodriguez. That's in this song, you know.
Do you think people expect it from you to follow trends? Let's say you have a big fan base and something is trending. Like, do you think people expect it from you to trend as well?
It's such a love-hate relationship with that, because I think certain people do, but at the same time, the moment you do it, they ostracize you for it. I mean, there's been a lot of drama with Billie Eilish, where some people say she's culturally appropriating for taking rap beats, and it's like, but it's rap beats. It's what's in right now. Everyone's gonna do it, and I mean that's a whole discussion. But it's important, you know, to be like, sometimes trends can verge on you like making someone mad, or it can be the very thing that people go, oh yeah, look. No, they're doing it. That's so cool. You know, sometimes it's just like, oh yes, I was waiting for to see what Billie Eilish would do with this sound that's been popping up. You know, because I think that's the key, is if something's trending and you want to use that trend, still try to make it your own.
Yeah.
Still put your own spin on. Don't just copy. Just be like, this sound works right now. How can I make it work for me?
Yeah. I mean, what's going to be popular after that trend? Or can you set a new trend by using the old trend, if that makes any sense?
Yeah.
You know, okay, cool. Incorporate the trend that is happening right now, you know, and do something new with it. Maybe you can create like something totally else.
Yeah, but talking about the track, we can just look at the chart again, have a little chat about the chords. Just thinking of something to...
What's the chord progression there?
So the chord progression is interesting, and this is a trend with Eilish's music. She kind of likes these old school doo-wop chord progressions. So it's a G that leads to a G7 very nicely into a C major. So the chord progression starts on a C major to E7, which resolves nicely to A minor, which is immediately followed by a D minor, and then a G7, and then back to the C. And that is the most typical 1-6-2-5-1 jazz progression in the book. That was definitely converted to pop music in the 60s, where they had, you know, the doo-wop singers, and she channels that. It's very much that almost sarcastic, nostalgic, you know, like, I mean, the song, you know, I'm happier than ever, and yet there's this sadness to it. And she speaks about it. She's in the book, you guys can go read. She talks about how this is in the BC Core workbook for everyone, I think, has this. She talks about how, like, yes, she's happy that she broke up with this person, but there's a sadness. You still miss them, you still love them. You had to break it off, but you didn't really want to. And that's reflected in these chords, because, I mean, it cycles on those kind of major chords for a while, and then eventually, instead of doing a D minor 7 to G7, it does a D diminished to the G7, which is from C minor, you know, so
really dark.
it wants to go to that C minor, and it still goes to the C major. That is the epitome of cheesy kind of modal interchange. Is you have this, am I going to the sad place? No, it's bright and happy. And it really, it's a nice sway. This whole song has a very nice sway to it, which is made even more swayy with the 6/8.
More sway.
When it sways into.
Sways even more.
It sways. It
when the
never mind swinging.
Starts to play.
Yeah. Make me sway. Yeah, no. So you have the 6/8 at the interlude where it just goes like.
It gets quite heavy.
Gets quite heavy, but it's a 6/8, so it's not that heavy. You know, if it's like a 12/8, then we're talking.
Yeah,
metal,
it's almost. I mean, the 6/8 almost makes it a bit more. What's the right word? Not sarcastic, but a bit more.
Like it's
playful.
Yeah. It's that down, 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 down. You know, it's not.
I mean, if it stayed at 4/4 and it got heavy,
it would have been weird. It would have almost been like classic rock.
It was a really good choice to keep it 6/8.
But to shift into that 6/8, it's nice. And the chords stay the same for the most part. But instead of having the 2/5, it just rests on an F, which is the 4 chord. So it's immediately more rock, because 2/5 was mostly reduced to just a 4 chord in pop and rock music, to kind of break that dominant expectation of 2/5/1. Like that's boring. We're just going 4, and it just
it's immense.
It's so solid. And yeah, I really like the tune. I'm looking forward to hearing what the students do with it and how it sounds there. Obviously, for reharming, because it's such a typical jazz progression, you can just Google how to change a 2/5/1. You can put all that in there. Just put more 2/5/1s in it, and it'll sound sick. Because her melodies are also very static, but on nice pitches.
Yeah, strong notes.
You know, in music, we just want to get good pitches. And then put nice chords underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this little chat about Billie Eilish.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in as well.
Yeah, we'll next time we'll talk a bit more about some other stuff. Please keep in touch on our Instagram. We are accepting question submissions every week.
Please.
But there will be some cool stuff coming your way. I think we have a guest speaker coming, our student Danny here, who she released a single recently, and we're going to be chatting about that. So fingers crossed that will happen in the next few weeks. Stay tuned and have a lovely week.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Chat soon.